and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hey, Oregon. Hello, America. East Coast and West Coast. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I've got a very special guest I'm going to bring on here in a few minutes. It's been a wild Monday. It's been a wild weekend. And not like one of those wild weekends I used to have when I was 25. No, it was one of those wild weekends where things just kept, situations were coming and going. A lot of things were different and they were changing. And, a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. And I wish I could tell you more, but I just want you to know that nothing here ever stays settled, okay? And so I had a great time at the fair this past week. I went down on Saturday. It was a fun time. We had a blast. And so we're going to probably do some type of event again for our Stop the Wind Turbine events, and hopefully we'll do something. Maybe we can do a barbecue or something. I don't know. It ought to be interesting. But today I got a special guest for you. And hopefully his microphone and his camera will work. I didn't get him on here in time to do a mic check. So hopefully everything's going to be okay. But I'm going to bring him on here. And we're going to talk about the Oregon General Jural Assembly. And I'm going to let him explain it because I'm not an expert on this. And I've got a lot of questions. So I'm going to let him explain it. So I am bringing on right now Dave Zaragoza. Did I pronounce your last name right there, Dave? Nope, I lost him before I had him. And he's gone. Well, that's the wonderful thing about live streaming. Sometimes you get him, sometimes you don't. Hopefully he'll click right back in there. But what we're going to be talking about today is the de jure government of the people by right. And I'm going to let him explain this Oregon General Jural Assembly. And it's interesting stuff. I don't know. I have people who have all kinds of different beliefs on the show, and sometimes, it's I'm a cynic. I'm the total cynic, and I don't know if I agree with everything they're saying. And I'm not an expert on legal battles that have happened in the past over 100, 150 years ago. If you had to look back the history of this country, do you know every case that ever has come before the Supreme Court and what they decided, what they haven't decided? Yeah, I haven't either. And so it's quite interesting that some of the things that people claim, you find out that there is a little grain of truth to what they're saying. So it makes things very interesting. I think I got him on here. Dave, are you with me, man?
Yes, I have you now. I was trying to log on from my cell phone because the computer just wasn't working. So I don't know, but I guess I'm here.
I hate when that happened. I pronounced your last name as Zaragoza. Is that correct?
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. No problem. It's interesting to have a last name with a Z in it. You were always the last in line for the milk pickup, right? Yeah.
Well, first lunch lineup at elementary school, I was always in the back of the line unless it was opposite day. Then I got to be first. the first of the line.
That's funny. Opposite day. Get that Allen boy in the back. He's screwed. Yeah. So this is some interesting stuff that I have been seeing going around. In fact, you and I have a couple of friends, mutual friends, who are involved with this, and so that's why I wanted to get you on here to explain to people what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I've got a video I want to play down the road that you had sent me and explain to me what was going on with that. But first off, tell me who you are and why are you doing this?
So just so you know, I don't claim to be a citizen, a person, or a resident. You know, anytime I'm in an official capacity, I always state that as the record. And the reason is because we don't know how these words are spelled. We don't know about the grammar that they're used. And a lot of times it's used as trickery to change our status from, like, for example, I claim to be a living spirit inside of a man called Dave. And I don't really ask people to call me Dave. It's just naturally what people call me. My name is David. And when people get comfortable with me, they naturally call me Dave. And that's always how it's been my whole life. So I never really knew what that meant until the scam-demic of 2020, 2021. I was a health advocate. My family has this juice bar here in town, and we did not change our policies or our procedures or our way of doing business, even though the state of Oregon and the Oregon Department of Health came down with these mandates. It turns out they weren't that mandatory. It was mostly under what I call forced voluntary consent. And the way the force was used was through threats and fear and intimidation, which is also coercion. So when I learned that the state was using coercion to alter our business practices and basically create division, and we had one of the only health stores here in town, so the liquor store was still open. The gyms and the juice bar was trying to be closed, and I did not agree with that. I did not think that we should isolate ourselves or close the juice bar or change how we did business. And then in order for me to go get the produce that we need for the juice bar, I was required to wear a face covering. And I told the people at the store, I said that my doctor does not want me wearing a face covering because it limits my oxygen intake and it forces me to rebreathe my own CO2, which is a waste product that my body produces, and it's acidic. And so then I started learning about the long-term benefits of CO2 exposure and deoxygenation of the brain. And I said no. And I've basically, that was the hill I was willing to die on. And so just going to the store to buy produce was challenging because I was being coerced into covering my airway. And it wasn't just me, it was everybody. And so I knew that, like my grandma, for example, you know, her health history did not qualify her to cover her airway and rebreathe her CO2. But she didn't have the courage to stand against the coercion. So not only was I doing this for myself, but I was doing it for all of the people who were unable to speak for themselves. I wanted to be an advocate for the people. And that was, 3 or 4 years ago, and it hasn't stopped. I'm still an advocate for the people and for myself, first and foremost. So when you see me in this video, just understand that I don't follow or comply unlawful mandates. And that's it. It's an unlawful mandate. And it goes back to 2020 when it started.
So saying someone who, and by the way, I agree with you with the mask. The mandates were just totally illegal. They were based on a phony emergency that was passed. Just because they pass an emergency does not eliminate our U.S. Constitution. It doesn't get rid of our natural rights. We are immune to that because those things are immutable. And so it was a farce. It was literally a farce. And I don't know why most of America fell for this farce. We should have told the government to go pound sand. And so one of the things that you just stated about how you won't follow unconstitutional laws, don't you think there are people out there who may take that to the extreme and say, well, I don't follow unconstitutional laws, so I'm going to go out, murder, steal, rape, do whatever I want? Explain how that would be prevented.
The number one natural law is do no harm. And that's the golden rule. It says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so that it means I don't speed in residential neighborhoods doing 80 in a school zone, because that creates fear. That's harm. I don't want to do harm to my neighbor. And I don't do anything that could create financial harm, emotional harm, physical harm, or spiritual harm, because I said I'm a living spirit inside of a man called Dave. And that means that I don't trespass upon another. But that also means I don't want to be trespassed upon. And I'll tell you, I used to work in the ambulance services, and that's one of the big things that I mention in these videos is I say I used to be an ambulance driver, and that's like doing business as a driver, and that's getting paid to use the road to produce an income, which I was doing. So you need a license to do something that is otherwise illegal. License to fish, license to have your kayak on the lake, license to drive, license to practice medicine. This is a permission to do something that is otherwise illegal. And I had a license to administer pharmaceutical medications to unconscious, unresponsive men and women under the guise of implied consent. So it's implied that if this person were to be alert and oriented, they would want life-saving measures. So I would forcefully penetrate and administer pharmaceutical drugs under implied consent. Our government operates under implied consent, because when they ask for license and registration and you give it to them, now they have your consent to traffic you under their codes and their statutes. Codes and statutes are not law. So you ask, how can we prevent someone from doing murder? Well, that's against the law. But I'm not talking about codes and statutes and ordinances and mandates. I'm talking about the law. And we have the jurisdiction that supports do no harm. And you mentioned it, it's natural law. And the Constitution is there to support the natural law. And if we're following the Constitution and we're following the natural law, then we inherently don't want to do harm to another.
And that's one of the things the Constitution does, is that it restricts the government from what we would believe would lead it to tyranny. Of course, the interpretations of the Constitution have been so twisted and bent that it no longer means what it used to mean because of the rulings and precedents that has been set throughout the last 260 years of this country's life. And so I always find it interesting when these movements starts, and this is part of the sovereign citizen movement, correct?
No,
Explain
that's a
the difference.
Well,
okay,
that's
explain.
That's an oxymoron. You can't have both.
Right, and I would agree with that.
A sovereign is someone who is self-governing under the natural law. A citizen is, well, there's two citizens. There's a proper noun citizen and a common noun citizen. And the Constitution identifies both. It's 22 times written in the Constitution, the word citizen. But in the 14th Amendment, it has a lowercase citizen, which is a common noun. And that's an unspecified term. So that means an employee of a corporation is a citizen. So if I work for the city of Bandon or the county of Coos or the state of Oregon, then I'm a citizen of the corporation thereof. But if I'm a capitalized C, proper noun citizen, then I'm outside of the corporate jurisdiction and I would be considered an American national.
So if you're outside,
under the
Republic, go ahead.
Yeah,
under the Republic.
Yeah.
So, but explain this to me. If you're working for a corporation and at that time you're the lowercase c citizen, you don't lose your rights, your natural rights that, you're giving, unless you give, I guess you could give up those rights to the corporation and allow them to violate your rights. But in all intents and purposes, you're not giving up your rights because you work for a corporation, unless that's
but you are under contract. And that's what really is the deciding factor, is because the reason why these police officers, they're trying to get us to contract with their corporation. And they do that under the implied consent, it's called tacit agreement. And so if I give them my tacit agreement to be governed under the corporation as a lowercase citizen, then now that's what they want you to sign the traffic citation. That's a contract.
right.
So everything is an offer, and it's an offer to contract. And then if you contract, then you have a duty to perform. And I don't have a duty to perform because I'm not under contract. So just like Walmart can't force their policies on me because I'm not an employee of their corporation, I don't have a contract with them. But they are open to the public during business hours. And that was the whole thing during the scamdemic, was I would say, are you providing public accommodation? Yes. Well, then you have to basically acknowledge my right to breathe.
Well,
and
but doesn't the corporation have the autonomy over their own business? And even though they open the doors to the public, don't they have a right to set their own rules? And if the public doesn't like it, well, then you go somewhere else.
Not if it's a violation of the law.
And how is it a violation of the law?
Because I have the right to body autonomy, and if I don't want to cover my airway, my immune system is under attack. If someone forces me, just like I can't, it's called an unwanted touch. I can't touch you unless you provide consent, and the laws are based on the consent of the governed. So you can't put a pillow over my face while I'm sleeping. Do I have to tell you that in order for you to know it? Or is it implied?
Well, that's a use of force. They're not forcing you to wear a mask to come into their business. You're choosing to wear the mask or not wear the mask, and they have a right to say, no, this is our business and we don't want you to do that. So go to another store. You're free to go anywhere you want. You just can't come here. And that's where I see businesses losing their own autonomy to their own rights, to basically people who want to be able to do what if you didn't want to wear pants, David? You know what I mean? What if you if you wanted to go butt ass naked to the store, then you don't think the store has a right to say, no, you can't come in?
Well, actually, I use that as one of my teaching points, because in the city of Ashland, it's legal to be nude, but you better be wearing your mask, especially during the pandemic. And so there's a lot of controversy because, for example, with us having the juice bar, we didn't change our policies, and that is our right to do so. But also, we can't discriminate against mask wearers. We couldn't say, sorry, you have a mask, therefore you're not qualified to shop at our business, and we can't turn people away because of their choice to wear a mask. That's called discrimination, and the civil rights movement paved a way for us to not be discriminated against.
Well, I have a lot of problems with the civil rights movement because I believe, once again, like what you're talking about, it violates the right of the business to make decisions for what's best for their property and their business. And the thing is if I had a rule that nobody could wear a mask or everybody should wear a mask in my business, either one should be upheld by my right to decide what goes on in my business. I open the doors, and it's a private business, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone I want. But I do.
No, sir, that's not a private business, because there's a such thing called a PMA, as a private membership association, like your cigar clubs and your gentlemen's clubs. They can turn people away. In fact, COVID and the whole scamdemic created or at least inspired the creation of many PMAs, because there is a dramatic difference between open to the public and open to the private. So when you create a PMA, a private...
Well, that's why I had a problem with the civil rights laws. This is my problem with the government itself. They're telling businesses what they will and won't do, and they're able to use these emergencies to pass these mandates to force on businesses, which I believe the business, having their own right, their own autonomy to decide what happens in their business, should be able to say no. And in fact, I would go even further. If they want to be racist or sexist, say a business doesn't want to serve women, I think that there is an absolute right for a business to say, we don't want to serve women. And what difference is it between saying, I don't want to serve women, or a bar saying, we don't want children in here because we don't want to have children getting drunk? I'm not sure I'm connecting these two. I know I'm not.
Well, I'm inclined to slightly agree with you, only because we vote with our dollars. So if it were me and they said no Mexicans, I just like during that time they said, sorry, you cannot come in without a face covering. Eventually I stopped arguing and I just went to the places that allowed me to breathe free air. And so then I started voting with my dollar. And, you know, there's even a thing right now that says, like a meme going on around that says, if a business goes cashless, it's our job to help them go customerless. Right. Well, really, that's opinion, you know, and that's sort of like what you're saying. If a business decides to go cashless and discriminate against cash, then we have the option to use our debit card, or we have the option to shop somewhere else. So that is, I mean, I don't disagree with you.
Right. Well, and let's flip this, because your two examples, I have lived through both of those examples, and I'll give you. There's a business in town who's stopped accepting plastic money. They'll only accept cash, and no law says they have to accept plastic money. It's great, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And so I support their right not to have to accept plastic money. They will only take cash. And then going to your other example about, you know, when there was discrimination and people wouldn't let certain ethnicities into their building, that happened in Albuquerque in the 80s, where it was a Mexican neighborhood and there was a Mexican store that said no whites allowed. And the city wanted to fine them every day for discrimination. And I was one of the few people who went down there and supported their right not to have whites in their store, because it was their store. And people thought I was nuts. Well, Rob, do you want people discriminating against blacks? Well, no. And I don't even really want these people discriminating against whites. I just want them to have the right to do it. If they choose to do it and it's the wrong thing, then we vote with our money and we walk. But as long as I believe they have the authority to do it, I think it's even worse to have a government big enough to take away their right to deny someone service because they just, for some reason, don't like white people. And to be honest with you, I could understand. So,
well, and we can take it even further down the ridiculous path and say that someone with an amputated leg can feel discriminated against a shoe store for selling a pair of shoes. A lot of shoe stores won't sell just one shoe. You have to buy the pair. And if you're an amputee, then that might be offensive. I don't know. Everybody's looking for a reason to be offended nowadays.
That is true. And you know, like I was telling at the beginning of the show, I just worked at the fair, and there were some people I didn't even get to say a word to, and they were already offended by what we were sitting there doing. You know what I mean? It was funny. They'd walk up, you're wrong, you don't have the right facts. And as soon as I said, well, you want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk to you. And they'd walk off. And so, yeah, it's weird how people get offended, and because we can disagree as humans, you know what I mean? That's what life is all about. You know, I don't agree with anyone 100% of the time, but the law, and this is even something that was mentioned in one of your natural rights, the law, on the other hand, has to treat everyone equally. Everyone has to be treated and have equal application of the law. We agree with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's called equity, and really it's remedy. It's to provide fairness. In the laws of equity is to provide a fair remedy. But there's also a maxim in law that says in order for a crime to be committed, there has to be an injured party. And that's where I have an objection to the state of Oregon claiming to be an injured party, because the state of Oregon cannot take a witness stand. The state of Oregon cannot provide witness testimony. The state of Oregon is an idea, it's a fiction. And so there is no man or woman called the state of Oregon that is going to claim that I damaged them. That's the problem, is there's no injured party. And I'll tell you, in California, in the early 90s, the Bill Clinton administration, they did the 3 strikes law. And my dad was sentenced to 25 years to life under 3 strikes for a traffic violation with no injured party. He did no harm.
Right.
Right. But also for what I'm doing on my private time, if it was 1993 in California, I'd be in prison right now, which is sad.
And much of what you just said, I completely agree with. When there is no victim, there is no crime. And in today's world, the state can say, yes, we were harmed. We're coming in to sit as the victim because you didn't get and I'll give an example, the video we're going to watch, you had an expired license plate, or you had expired license, or you didn't have the right tax, or the fact that maybe someone got busted with pot and nobody else got hurt other than maybe, say, the person who smoked the pot, which I'm not sure how they even hurt themselves just doing that. But once again, the state of Oregon can come in and say, we're the victim of this guy smoking pot, and therefore we have standing in prosecuting someone for doing something to themselves. In fact, the term of it is called a victimless crime, because unless there's actually, like you said, a man named Dave sitting on the other side of the table saying, here's how I was hurt by this person's actions, there's no crime committed, right? Is that pretty much what you're saying?
Right. And also the state of Oregon hires most likely a bar member, a bar association attorney to represent them. So when I say that, like, I'm at war with the government, what I really mean to say is I'm at war with the bar association, because they're the ones who are administering these trespasses against us, not so much the state of Oregon, because the bar is representing the state of Oregon in the claim. So really, every time I go to court, I'm going against the bar, is how it feels.
What are some of the things you've gone to court for that you are fighting against?
Well, the first time I went to court was for a medical bill that went to collections, because at the time of the injury, I had received a closed head injury and I had positive loss of consciousness. And the number one rule of contracting is competence. So when I was obligated to a financial debt, I knew that I was not competent to contract. So what I did was I submitted a conditional acceptance that said I would be happy to accept this debt if you can prove that I was competent to enter into this obligation. And they could not prove that. In fact, I provided the medical records to prove that I wasn't. And I was arguing that they were committing fraud by not bringing in a cosigner. I have an emergency contact listed, and my emergency contact wasn't informed of my injury or my obligation to pay. So I was claiming fraud, and I was arguing more with the judge, and the judge was defending the system, and the attorney was fighting to obtain the debt, and I was fighting for the truth. But it was not a court of truth, and it was not a court of law. It's an administrative court of record, and the judge's opinion is what constitutes for the ruling. So the judge had a much different opinion than me.
So what if they didn't administer the medication while you were unconscious? Would you have died? And what if the situation was where someone would have died if they didn't administer that? Aren't they somewhat responsible? Or do you think that's really a voluntary act of the person who is giving the treatment?
You're breaking up real bad. I barely heard anything that you said.
Okay.
Right
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
It's choppy.
Okay.
Yeah, better.
All right. Well, what I was saying is, okay, they administered medical treatment to you while you were unconscious. But let's say if you were in a situation where you could have died, and if they didn't administer this treatment, nope, I think I'm losing them. Damn. That was getting to a really good part there. And so I think you all know where I was going with this. I was going to ask him, well, what if a person who is, here he is. Okay. How about now? Can you hear me?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. So what if let's say your condition was a life or death condition and you were unconscious and they administered treatment, do you think there's any responsibility for you to owe them anything for that treatment, or was that just voluntary on their part?
Well, I mean, that's a really tough one to say because, for example, if they would have administered some type of mRNA gene modification, then I think I would have a claim in federal court. And then the challenge would be finding someone to represent me in court. So then I don't want to do. So then I would have to become my own attorney and present myself in court. I mean, that's what I've learned how to do. I'm not going to hire a bar association attorney to represent me in court. And even when we do, I lose my natural given rights as a man. And now I'm a person or a plaintiff or a respondent or something. They reclassify us all the time. So my goal is to maintain status, standing, and jurisdiction as a man.
Okay, and that's understandable. Let's put it on the other side here. What if someone shows up who is a medical technician, and the person that's there, who's sick, who's unconscious, who's going to die if they don't administer this medicine? Let's say it's Narcan, and they're ODing, and they decide not to do it because they want to make sure and get paid for their services. So they decide not to do it. The guy dies, and the family comes back and sues the professional with the Narcan who didn't administer treatment. Do you think that if you can't hold someone liable for not paying for services, then can't you not have to hold someone liable who decided not to provide those services? Is how that would go?
Yeah, it goes both ways, but also you have to know that the emergency medical technician is operating under a doctor's license. So there's always a license at play, and a license grants you permission to do something that is otherwise illegal. And that's where it gets kind of muddy. The waters get muddy because they're all under contract. They have duties to perform. And then there's a license that's like an umbrella, and a lot of times
we lost them again. And so that's going to go to my next point is then, well, because I don't think that someone, let's say a doctor does, because I've seen it where doctors have been sued because they haven't given treatment. And I think that's just as unfair as, the flip side of that. Sorry, you went out again. So let me ask you this.
I'm sitting right under it. The Wi-Fi is right here, so I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on either. It does happen from time to time. Usually it's not too bad, but that's okay. I want to show this video of what happened here in Bandon, and then I want you to give, your explanation and explain it out, okay? All right, so let me just a second here.
How you doing?
Very well. What's your emergency, sir? How can I help you?
Yeah, my name is Officer Mastrangelo with Bandon Police. Just so you know, I'm recording, as I can see here too. That's good. So the reason for the stop is your registration tags in your vehicle expired in March of 23. Do you have current ones in the glove compartment or anything?
So do you not know about me and the things that I do in my free time?
No, I don't. I've never met you before.
I have a receipt for my automobile purchase. I do not consent to your unlawful mandates and your regulations for registration and tags.
Don't consent.
I've been through this a lot. It's not a refusal, sir. It's a do not consent.
Okay, what does that mean, do not consent?
It means exactly what it says, sir. You should know that the law is governed by the consent, right?
Okay, do you have your ID with you, driver's license?
Sir, my name is right here. You
I
can
see
look.
that.
You can look me
I
up.
see your driver's license because you're operating a motor vehicle on the.
No, sir. I'm not operating a motor
Sure
vehicle.
you are. You're driving a car.
No, I'm traveling to my house. I don't.
Okay,
I don't have, sir. I don't have passengers.
I know.
I'm not using the road as a means to produce an income.
Okay.
You're a driver because you're on the clock.
Gotcha.
I used to be an ambulance
How do
driver.
you spell your last name? Zaragoza? Is that
Z.
Z.
Z-A-R.
Excuse me, Goza. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I'm not traveling. I'm challenging your jurisdiction.
You just said you were traveling.
I'm not driving.
You're not driving.
I am traveling home.
Okay.
And were you waiting for me out there in the
No,
parking lot?
I was actually just parked throwing something in the garbage, but I happened to see when I got behind you that your tag's expired.
I noticed that you were parked illegally in the parking lot. I don't think you're allowed to take multiple spaces at once. Yeah. So you're a driver, and which means that you're subject to the legalities of driving. I'm traveling home. No, I'm traveling home. Driving is a commercial term called doing business as a driver.
Okay.
I used to be a driver.
Okay.
But now I'm a private American traveling home. So that's the difference.
Okay.
If I had passengers or if I was providing service like ambulance services, I would be considered a driver.
Got it. What's your middle initial? David?
I don't consent to give up that information.
You have to realize you have to identify yourself.
I'm identifying myself as my name is David from the family of Zaragoza, but I don't have to give you more information than that.
What's your birth date?
I don't consent to a birth date, sir.
You don't consent to that.
I was created 9 months before the state gave me a birthday. That's the state's property, not mine. Sir, you could inform yourself by educating yourself such as I have. No one has taught me any of this. I've had to learn on my own.
Okay.
But you could do the very same thing, sir, same like I have. It's not too difficult.
Okay. Okay, sit tight, all right?
Excuse me, am I free to go? Am I being detained? Excuse me, am I being detained? Hello?
Zaragoza, you're lucky day. I just got a call about a disturbance. That's more important than this traffic stop. Just so you know, you're obviously driving with a suspended.
Sir, I'm not driving. We're on record. I'm not driving.
Okay?
We're on record. I'm not
One of
driving.
these days, you're going to wind up getting a bunch of citations. Today, you're lucky. I didn't have time to write them to you, so you're free to go.
I appreciate you. I hope you stay safe. Thank you. One's purpose, stop human trafficking. It's not a very difficult concept.
All right. So that was, let me tell you, that was an entertaining video. And to be quite honest with you, that was interesting how that turned out. Have you been stopped since then or before then?
Not since then. So before then, yes. And I've recorded all of my interactions. Not all of them have gone onto YouTube, but the first one that I did, it did not go so well. And I was not as practiced, but also the officers are very quick to do an arrest. And the very first time that it happened, I resisted an unlawful arrest on the side of the road, and I requested sheriff's department, and the sheriff not the sheriff, but a deputy ultimately assisted in the taking of me from my vehicle and took me to jail. And at that time, though, I was fully licensed, fully everything. I was legal. I just refused to cooperate, and I refused to give up the information. And I'll tell you what, the Fifth Amendment protects us from self-incrimination. So if I give up these documents and they're going to use them against me, which is the only thing they could do, then I have the right to protect against that.
And
the
that's
only crime.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, the only crime that I committed, I said the only crime, according to them, that I committed was not complying. I didn't comply.
And from what I understand, you don't have to show an ID anymore. And it's, unless you're doing something that is a downright actual, you're, like you said, you're doing 80 through the residential neighborhood, they're just going to pull you out and take you down. But if this is something such as your license plate is expired, I'm one of those who I'm tired of watching these nitpicky laws who just entrap people nonstop, because what you're doing is they're forcing you to comply with just nonsensical laws. They're just capricious and arbitrary. They're something that, why should I have to go out and pay the state to be able to drive my damn car? And the ID thing, if you're doing a crime, then take the person downtown, take their fingerprints, and find out who the hell they are. There's ways of doing this. I don't think that people should have to give up their ID. I just got a comment here, and None of Your Business says the seatbelt law is the most ridiculous of all. And I'll be honest with you, Dave, it's very rare that I wear a seatbelt. It's very painful for my shoulders to wear seatbelts, and I've actually fought that as well, because I think it's once again, it's a victimless crime. The only one who could possibly get hurt for me not wearing a seatbelt is me. So why am I being forced to wear a seatbelt other than it gives a reason for the police to stop me and go on a fishing trip to find out if I'm violating any of the 10 million other rules that they have set up to entrap you? And here's the thing that ticks me off. We got real legitimate criminals, people who are stealing, assaulting, causing property damage, real criminals, and yet we can't keep them behind bars. And who do they go after? Guys like you and me who aren't wearing a seatbelt, or we don't have the latest tag on our license plate. How ridiculous. And the only reason they do that is because we have to pay, or otherwise we lose our so-called rights to travel. And then they know that we can pay because we have jobs, and the people that are committing real crimes don't have jobs. They have nothing to lose. And so they know they got us over a barrel when they stop us. You know what I mean? And so that's the hard part of this. And that's why most people just comply. It's just easier to comply. And I won't tell you how I get out of the seatbelt laws. I've been pulled over probably about a half a dozen times here in Oregon, and I've got a way of getting out of the seatbelt laws. And I'm not going to tell my secret here because I don't want it getting out, so that they can prevent people from taking this initiative to stop being harassed for not wearing a seatbelt. But how did this go for you? How did this turn out for you?
Well, it's never really turned out well because I don't know how to be an attorney, and to attorn means to take property from one and give to another. So I don't want to be an attorney. That's actually the legal definition, to attorn. And really, every time I do it, I do my best to remain in honor. So I send the court a conditional acceptance, and I say I would be happy to accept these charges if you can somehow prove that I'm required to follow the codes, the Oregon Revised Statute. And that's where it is I'm challenging their jurisdiction, and I'm putting them in a position to respond. There's a lot to unpack. I write affidavit, which is like a testimony. And so I say that I'm not an expert in the law, but I do, I do know the difference between right and wrong. And right. I do want somebody to respond, because there's also this maxim in law that says the recipient of the affidavit bears the burden of proof. And if they receive the affidavit but they don't respond, it means that their silence is their acquiescence. And acquiescence is the acceptance of this truth. So I'll tell you, every single time this has happened, I've submitted these documents, which are heavy. If you tell me I owe you $3,000, I'm going to say, Rob, I respect you. I don't want to owe a debt to you. If you can provide a contract with wet signatures and meeting of the mind, then I'd be happy to pay you the debt. But unless you can provide a contract that says we've made an agreement, then I think that you're trying to extort me. And if you have a loaded gun on your hip, that's coercion, that's intimidation. Right. And so my last interaction with the Coos Bay police officers, I got stopped twice in 20 minutes. They went around the corner and they hid over by the Tioga. Yeah. And they waited for me to pass by a second time, and they pulled me over again. And I told them, I said, is that a loaded weapon on your hip? And he wouldn't answer me. He says, I'm giving you a lawful order. Step out of the vehicle. I said, is that a loaded weapon on your hip? He said, I'm giving you a lawful order. Step out of the vehicle. I said, if you have a loaded weapon on your hip, it's not a lawful order, because I feel like you're threatening me to voluntarily comply. And that's why when you really do your research, you realize that the police officers, all they're doing is they're asking questions. They're not telling you what to do, because they can't. What they do is they make requests, and I'm just denying their requests. That's all I'm doing, is respectfully denying their requests.
And this is something else that I often tell people who are in our situations, because you and I, we run with a certain crowd, and we just don't. There are certain laws out there that I can tell you they're just unnecessary, and as far as I'm concerned, they're unconstitutional, because they create burdens on people that are just absolutely ridiculous. But the problem is that if you fight these, you've got to realize you're going to pay a penalty. And I'll go back to the sovereign citizen. I know you said this has nothing to do with the sovereign citizen movement, but I have friends and family who believe in the sovereign citizen movement. I personally don't, but they believe in the sovereign citizen movement, and they've tried it in court. And to this day, out of the at least a dozen times I've seen people try the sovereign citizen defense, they have never won. Not a single one of them. You there, Dave? Wow,
I'm not getting anything that you're saying.
Oh, okay. Well, what I was saying is that every time I've seen someone use the sovereign citizen defense, even though this is not part of sovereign citizen. Okay, we're losing David again. That happens. I got another comment from None of Your Business. The real reason they do it is to get their foot in the door so they can pull you over and go fishing. That's exactly why they do it. But in Oregon, they just passed a law about 5 years ago, which says they can't go on fishing trips, meaning that they can't pull you over for one thing and then ask you about other things. They're not allowed. They're not supposed to do that, meaning if they're checking for a light that's out on your car, they can't then ask you, well, do you have the insurance? Do you have, a gun in your car? Do you have this, that, or the other thing? They're not supposed to be able to do that. They're not supposed to be able to go on these fishing trips. And I completely agree with that. Hey, David.
Hello again.
Hey, I forgot the question that I asked.
Sovereign citizen. I got something about sovereign citizen.
Yeah, even though this is not about the sovereign citizen movement, I have seen people use the sovereign citizen argument in court, and because they have gone up against the laws that they disagree with, and every time I've seen them try to use this sovereign citizen defense, they fail. And so what defense do you use? And what do you call it when you're in there, trying to defend yourself in a court of law?
The implied surety and the beneficiary, because they're in the jurisdictions, Juris means the rule of, and diction means words. So we're under the rule of words. And that's why I say I'm not a citizen, person, or resident, but I am a beneficiary, because I was born with these rights, these unalienable rights. They're my property. And the reason that they were given to me at my birth as property is so I can benefit. So what I
Gosh, we lost him again. Oregon Outlaw says, next thing you know, you're under maritime law. Yeah, no kidding, huh? So Dave, let's take this to the Oregon General Jural Assembly. What is that about, and what do you guys hope to achieve?
say that one more time.
What is the Oregon General Jural Assembly? Because you're organizing a group and you have to be trying to do something. There must be a reason for you doing this. What are you trying to do it under, and what do you hope to achieve in your goals of whatever you're doing?
To restore the constitutional republic for the men and women of Coos County. And I say that very specifically, not the people. I mean, there's a lot to say about people and persons, but we're all men and women, and even the children are miniature men and women, and our job is to maintain our own dominion, right? And I don't want to get into biblical principle, but there is biblical principle. In the book of Genesis, it talks about how we were given dominion, but the state and the federal government. So I don't know if you realize, but there's two constitutions. There's the Constitution of the United States, and there's the Constitution for the United States. The Washington, D.C. Corporation, they're the ones who created the Constitution of the United States. But our founding fathers and the Bill of Rights and our founding documents from 1787 or thereabouts, we have the Constitution for the United States. And I'm pretty sure United States is not in all capital letters. That's the difference. If you look at City of Bandon, all caps. County of Coos is different than Coos County. County of Coos is a corporation. And like, for example, when I went up against Melissa Cribbins for the mandates, she was the key principal holder of the corporation called County of Coos. So that's why I went after her as the key principal. Mary Shamahorn is the key principal for the corporation called City of Bandon. And they all have Dun & Bradstreet numbers, just like the Juice Bar, just like Broken Anchor. There's no difference. And so if a government decides to incorporate themselves, they must follow the same rules as all other corporations. And that's under maritime law. Like your listener commented, we are under maritime law because we're all forced into commercial contracts under implied or forced voluntary consent. So what we're trying to do, not what we're trying to do, what we are doing is we're reestablishing the constitutional Republican form of government for men and women on the land and soil called Coos County, not County of Coos.
Dave, the thing is that under the Constitution, it allows you to create these corporations, and yet they're subservient to the Constitution itself. And are you saying that the act of, 1879? What was the act that is cited in here? But the whole point is it's the act of Congress by 1871. And what a lot of advocates for this are always saying is that this is it allowed the Washington, D.C. to incorporate itself, and it turned America into a corporation, but it also extended the U.S. Constitution into D.C., meaning that they have to live by the same rules under the Constitution. So I'm not sure where I get where you say there's two different constitutions. When was that ratified?
Well, I don't think it was. That's the thing. And the 14th Amendment hasn't been ratified either. And that's what creates the lowercase citizen. That's why I say there's two citizens. Lowercase refers to the Washington, D.C. foreign corporate citizen, and the capital proper noun citizen is of the Republic and the original organic Constitution.
Well, then if it hasn't been ratified, then it isn't subject to anything because it hasn't been ratified. And so we still are living under the original Constitution, right?
Right, but that's why they require our consent to be governed under their corporation. That's why when you go to a medical appointment, what do they ask? Name and date of birth. That's why I don't consent to a date of birth. I was created 9 months before the state issued me a date of birth.
How old are you? How do you keep track of how old you are if you don't recognize your date of birth, Dave?
I'm getting younger, Rob. I am younger than I was 10 years ago biologically because of the juice bar and the water. We have control over the way our body ages. 5G, television, all this stuff, it creates aging process. And my lifestyle is designed to reverse my age. So we have a chronological age, and always people used to say I was an old soul. So what is that? Spiritually, who knows how old I am? Biologically, I'm reversing my age. So I don't claim I have one birthday. The day I arrived, I went from the water to the land, right? Jurisdiction from the water in the womb to the land. And now I'm under the law of the land, which is common law, do no harm.
But what if you break the law and they need to identify you? How do they identify you? Is it through fingerprints, eye prints, DNA? What would you prefer?
Well, to be honest, I have a passport. What I did in that video that you showed was I showed them my receipt for my purchase of my automobile. I paid cash. They gave me a receipt, and that's called allodial title. That's supreme title. The state of Oregon does not have a claim on my property. But I'll tell you what, I also just had a son, and he's a month old. Mm-hmm. So we're choosing not to do the birth certificate or the social security number. What we did was we did a affidavit of live birth, and we have a witness testimony to witness his arrival. So we're going to publish in the newspaper a public notice of his arrival, and we're going to document it in the family Bible. And so for me, we've got the affidavit to prove that he arrived when we say he did. We've got witness testimony, but my mom didn't know any of this stuff. So of course I still have a birth certificate. I still have a social security number. And I'm under the impression that was all created without proper consent because it was never explained to my mom the truth. And we can actually unpack this a little further if your listeners know anything about a foundling hospital. I think in maybe the 1200s or something, there was where it's a safe place to abandon, be like at a fire station or a church or a hospital. They call that a foundling hospital. So I believe that's how they've been able to orchestrate this fraud, is when we go to the hospital and then they call it a maternity ward. So then we become a ward of the state if we consent to all of these certifications. But for me, I would prefer to use my passport because that's the only documentation I use when traveling. And on the very first page of the passport, there's a statement by the Secretary of State for the United States that says that if anybody comes into contact with me, they're supposed to offer help or aid, but then they're also to provide no hindrance. And I've asked the officers to read the first page of my passport, and they don't care about it at all. They do what they're trained to do. So in a perfect world, I would use my passport, and
So we lost him again. And boy, I mean, the more he talks, the more questions I have, because I'm wondering, I wonder if Dave pays taxes. That was one of my questions. And None of Your Business was had the same question. Ask Dave if he pays taxes. So we'll ask him that. But I had a couple of other questions for you. So Dave, let's say you do this for your child. Aren't you basically, if you do this, they're not going to be able to access any of the programs that are provided by the government right now, such as Social Security, disability, Medicaid, Medicare, and so on and so on. Do you think that's going to be a problem for your child later on?
Well, I don't accept those services either. Just the same as I don't go to Taco Bell, McDonald's, or Burger King. I don't want to accept their products or their services. And because I know that the medical system that we have is actually like a symptom management, disease manufacturer system, I'm not interested. There is emergency services. And it's sad that we have to live in this world with this system, because I would love to have the security of knowing that myself and my son and my family, we have the option to receive care. But right now, our medical system is not a system that I want him to be harvested by. And so I'm going to do everything that I can to prevent that, which is why I'm focused on preventative health. I used to be in reactive health and
Right.
wellness, but now I'm in preventative health and wellness. And my job as his guardian is to
protect him. And so therefore you would automatically try to make sure that he's not going to do all those bad things that all the rest of us do, like eating at Taco Bell. You eat too much of that Taco Bell, you're going to end up in a bad place. And you're looking for a little bit of diverticulitis on that one. Dave, so that's actually, I was expanding on what you were saying about your child. You do have a duty to protect your child and to protect your child from a medical system, which many of us would agree is not there to even cure people. It's there to keep you in the system so that you're a patient for the rest of your life. So literally harvesting you is a good term, because they're harvesting your body as a product instead of you being a person. And that's we all see that. I mean, anyone who watches TV can see the commercials nonstop of all the things they will give you that will treat the symptoms, but there's not a whole lot they're offering that cures the disease. And it's a sad state of affairs. And yeah, I do believe that type of manipulation is going on, and the best way to prove that is to look at the mRNA shots that were not vaccines; they were actual DNA treatment. So just very strange that I agree with you with that.
So can I tell you one more thing too? I don't want to get into
Yes.
religion, but we know about atheism is when you don't believe in God, but agnostic is when you don't know if there's a God. You don't know one way or the other if you're agnostic.
Right.
So also the Greek term for knowing is gnosis, starts with a Gnosis. And that means knowing. Then agnostic means not knowing. So then if you put a DI before agnostic, it implies to not knowing. So when I have a problem and I go to the doctor and I receive a diagnosis, the only thing I'm receiving is two people not knowing. So I don't want to go and receive a not knowing from someone
Right.
who's practicing medicine. They're just practicing and they have a
Right.
license to do that.
And I can tell you, someone who's been to plenty of doctors, I have been told, I have been at doctors. Well, I'll give you an example. My mother had to go to the emergency room because of high blood pressure. And the doctor there told her, well, you're going to have to stay because we're going to have to perform an operation and put a stunt in your chest. You have clogged chest. And the next day, the other doctor, who was her actual doctor, came in and said, I'm not reading those same indicators as the first doctor. And so they got into an argument whether she needed the operation or if she just needed to change her medication. She got a medication change, didn't go through the operation, and that was over a week ago, and she's doing fine. So once again, that proves they're just practicing. This is really just practice for a lot of them. So Dave, let's continue with this, the jury thing. So where are you going with this? What do you guys intend to do?
So right now, and if I ask the average American person, I say that intentionally, the average American person, they don't know the three branches of government. Most people don't, right? You have executive, legislative, and judicial. But under the constitutional republic, there's 5 branches of government. There's the grand jury, the executive, legislative, and judicial, and then there's the Jural Assembly. And we have the right to assemble under the First Amendment of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that's what we're doing, is we're assembling, and each county is its own little sovereign, independent nation state. And the sheriff is the highest form of authority in the county. The government is supposed to answer to the sheriff. And, you know, that's the way it should be, but that's not the.
Well, oh, he's gone again. I was going to ask him, well, the sheriff has to follow the U.S. Constitution because he's under the authority of the Constitution. So, you know, we hear this, here he is. Let me get him back on here. So Dave, my question to you is that, yes, the sheriff is the highest legal law enforcement officer in the county, but he still has to live under the U.S. Constitution. He still has to follow the Constitution. So what do you do when you got a bad sheriff?
I barely heard what you're saying. Our sheriff does not follow the Constitution. That's true. We have an unconstitutional sheriff in Coos County.
And so what do you do about that?
Well, he doesn't have an oath to the people. He only has an oath to the Washington.
Okay, we lost him again. But that's here he is. Are you there, man?
Our sheriff does not have. Yep. Our sheriff does not have an oath to the people. Our sheriff, when he took his oath to the corporation of the Washington, D.C. So what we have to do is we have to get him to take a new oath under the Constitution for the people, not for the government. He needs to take a new oath.
Once again, do you think he knows the difference? Because like I said, the Constitution, the second one you're talking about, hasn't been ratified. So if he's taken an oath, he's still taking an oath to the original Constitution, right?
I don't think so. There's no proof that he does. We haven't been able to find any proof that he does.
And none of your business is saying good luck with that, meaning, you know, good luck with that, because even if you could prove that it wasn't, who do you go to? Because the courts are as corrupt as anything else in this country as far as what the government goes. So how do you get rid of these people? How do you take care of this business?
What we've done is the Oregon General Jural Assembly is the umbrella for the state and the de jure constitutional republic. And then in Coos County, we have a Petite Jural Assembly for Coos County. And we make up the greater body of people, we the people. And so basically what happens is we've created these grievances or these 12 declarations of truth, and the grand jury for the country, like the national grand jury, has already found that our declarations of truth have substance. So that's how they were able to form the General Jural Assembly. Is the grand jury basically told them that now you have to assemble your counties. And we have to have 75% of the counties in Oregon. And this is the original counties when Oregon became a state of Oregon. There was only 18 original counties. Now there's 36. So we have to get 75% or more of the original counties, which is only 14 counties, is 75%, to form an assembly, and it has to be done properly under the Constitution. And that's what we've done. Coos County is settled. And now we're helping there's 5 remaining counties in Oregon that need to be settled. For example, Curry County is settled. Douglas, settled. Lincoln, settled. Jefferson County, I think, is settled, but Jackson is not. And so there's these counties that still need to settle. Once we've reached 14, then the Oregon General Jural Assembly will be settled for Oregon, which is the state level. The day that happens, our Chief Justice for the Oregon General Jural Assembly is going to take those 12 declarations of truth to the Commander-in-Chief of the military. And we have to know that there's 2 positions. There's the President of the United States, which is corporate, and then there's the Commander-in-Chief of the military, which is republic. It's more of a Republican form of command. And, you have to ask yourself, who is the current president of the corporation called the United States of America? And why is he all of a sudden 6 inches taller and allowed to poop his pants on national TV? Because he's a puppet, he's an actor, and the show is almost over. And when we reach our quorum of counties in Oregon, we will go to the Commander-in-Chief, we will submit our declarations of truth, and the Constitution obligates him to send in the military to clean up these criminals in the de facto, which is fraud, in the state of Oregon, which is fraud, so we can reestablish our constitutional Republican form of government, de jure, of the people, for the people, by the people, which we already know how long we've been fighting for this. And many people have lost their lives. And I know that when I get pulled over by the cops, they are trained to use force if necessary. So it's my job to remain in honor, but also I know what's at stake, and I'm willing to go the distance for my son. As scary as that might be, I know that this is the hill I'm willing to die on.
Because they've asked it twice now. 2 different people have asked this. Do you pay property taxes?
I actually went to war against my mortgage company because the etymology for mortgage is death pledge. And I asked them to present an original contract. I believe that I was the creditor. I don't believe that the mortgage company loaned me any tangible assets in order for me to acquire my property. So I went to war with them, and they immediately tried to foreclose. I learned that the mortgage company is a loan servicing agent, and their job is to facilitate a foreclosure. So instead of allowing them to foreclose on my property, I did a private sale by owner with cash. And I hold minimal property now because of what I'm doing. I don't want the state to take what I've earned. So I give a lot of what I have away. Most of what I have does not have a registration. It's not registered under the state, and they don't have jurisdiction. So what they're attempting to take now is me. And you asked me earlier what I claim to be, and I don't know if you heard because my internet was spotty. but I claim to be the implied surety. So a surety is somebody that's held as collateral. Because, like, for example, if I don't pay my taxes, they'll take me to jail, right? That's the assumption or the coercion. That's the threat. And that means that my body, my flesh and blood is held as surety for the debt. Well, so I claim to be implied surety, but I also claim to be beneficiary, because in trust law, the beneficiary's job is to accept benefits. And you have my property listed on your video right now, a list of unalienable rights that I was born into. And the way that I describe this is, imagine if as babies we were born wearing clothes, right? It's crazy to imagine, but let's just say we were born wearing clothes and shoes. And the stitching and the laces, they were made of gold. But as a newborn baby, you don't know, you don't remember the property that you were born with. And so over the years, people have stolen our property, and then they've given us benefits and privileges in exchange for our unalienable rights. So what I'm doing is I'm saying no thank you to your benefits and privileges. I prefer to keep the property that I was born with. And that's where this is as beneficiary, my job is to accept benefits. But as trustee, they have duties and obligations to perform. And the state of Oregon and the fraudulent corporation that we call our government, they've switched it through this implied consent and tacit agreement and trickery, it's word magic, to get us to become the trustee that has duties and obligations so they can be the beneficiary and receive benefits. And that they've flipped it on us and we didn't know.
Well, and I would agree with you on the property taxes, that property taxes are something that you never own your property if you're going to continuously have to pay on them. That's absolutely ludicrous. I'm opposed to property taxes. For many myriad of reasons. I think the government is just too large anyway, and they're living off what we're paying them. The mortgage company, though, I have a little bit of problem with you on this one, Dave, because the mortgage company gave you money so that you could go out, gave the bank money, guaranteed the money to the bank. You're shaking your head no, but somebody had to guarantee the house payments, and you agreed with that. And therefore, your signature
paid. That's called a negotiable instrument.
But it's a contract. You made a contract to pay money to keep your house.
It's a fraudulent contract because they did not provide full closure. They did not identify me as the creditor.
Well, isn't that your fault if you signed and didn't know all of that?
Well, yes, but also the entire system is fraud because we're not working with actual money. We're only working with Federal Reserve notes, which are a form of negotiable instruments, but Congress has already said that that's not money. Gold and silver is money. The rest of it is debt. It's notes. So we're paying a debt. We're using debt to pay a debt, which is fraud. So the whole system is fraud. And unless it's explained to us, then we're participating under threats and fear and intimidation to perform, but under fraudulent circumstances, because the whole system is based on fraud.
The fiat currency, I get what you're saying, but the thing about the agreement, you made the agreement with the mortgage company, whether it was fraud or not. Once you make the agreement, isn't the agreement sacrosanct in your mind? You've given your word to do a performance, and they've given their word to provide a service, and therefore you are in the wrong if you don't live up to your side. And no matter how corrupt the rest of the system is, it was the system that you used in the agreement of the contract.
Right. But so not paying is dishonorable, but that's not what I did. What I did was I sent the CFO, the chief financial officer of the mortgage company. I sent what's called a conditional acceptance. Same like I explained to you, sir. I would be happy to pay you the money that you say I owe if you can provide a contract, if you can prove that you're the original creditor, if you can prove that you had the money in your account that was transferred to my account. I put all of these stipulations, and they responded by foreclosing and calling back the remainder of the loan. So to me, that's dishonorable. So my goal was to remain in honor with a conditional acceptance. I would be happy to pay this debt if you can prove that I actually owe you a debt. And they couldn't. So instead of bargaining with me, they steamrolled me.
But you went through another solution besides going to court, because if they eventually took you to court, I guarantee you, Dave, the court would have found inside on the side of the mortgage company.
Well, maybe not in federal district court, because a lot of these cases are going to federal district court and they're ruling in my favor, except for I don't have the experience to present myself against a multi-million-dollar company in federal district court. I didn't feel confident in my ability to present my case. So I sold the house.
And that's understandable and legitimate way to get out of that. I've got a person who just asked another question, and let's see, where is that? Does he pay income tax? Do you pay income tax?
I haven't done any business with the IRS since 2012, and they haven't said anything to me about it. And if they were to come after me, I would submit a conditional acceptance, and I would ask them to show me the law that obligates me to pay an income tax. And they can't do it because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, right? And that one I have seen argued in court. In fact, successfully on some certain levels. Not always, though. And I think that's something that's going to be interesting going down the line. Alex Bowser asked, how is this lifestyle working out for you?
Well, to be honest, it depends on how you look at it, because I feel like I've learned more than I ever would have. I feel like I have more. So I say belief is the enemy of knowing. If you have a belief, you don't have a knowing. And most of us have strong beliefs, but we've outsourced our knowings to the professionals. That's why we have to hire an attorney. We have to go to the doctor, or we have to go to college. And it's, for me, my life has improved. 2020 was the best year of my life until 2021. That was the best year of my life. It just keeps getting better. And for me, I mean, you could say, well, the courts have me in collections because they act like any other business. And if you don't pay them, they'll sell your debt to a third-party collection agency. And then now you're dealing with an attorney's office or a corporation, like a third-party debt collector. Right. All they're doing is they want to collect the money. And so all I do is I just send them letters that says who I am. I submit an affidavit of fact, and it explains who I am. And then I send a conditional acceptance, and it explains to them that I would be happy to pay if they can provide a contract. And I give the rules of contracting, and I say, please meet these requirements. It has to meet these requirements under contract law. And then I don't hear from them. They ignore me. And right now I've got maybe 4 charges that have gone to collections, and nothing has happened. Literally nothing has happened because they do not respond to my letters. In fact, lately, the letters that I have been getting, they appear to be official, but they don't have a signature. I'm getting letters from the court with no signature at the bottom. No man or woman wants to put pen to paper and argue with me, but all they're doing is they're threatening me, but they're not signing the document. So to me, that's fraud, like blatant fraud.
Well, let me ask you this and put the shoe on the other foot, because they're looking at this as something completely different. And I don't know what you owe for, but are you saying that you owe for violations of the court, or are you saying that you owe because you didn't pay your credit card debt or your mortgage? Where is it? Because those are two separate entities. You're talking about one that's a business and one that is a government entity.
No, they're all incorporated. They all have Dun and Bradstreet numbers. They all have all capital letters. It's the Circuit Court of Coos or something. But they've incorporated themselves just like the juice bar, just like every other corporation. There's a CEO and a CFO and a COO, and each of these judges are like private contractors, and they're not of the court, but they're in the court as separate business entities. They've all incorporated themselves to remove personal liability. It all has to do with personal liability. They've created a blanket of a corporate blanket to protect themselves, but under the common law and constitutional law, they're not protected. They're liable.
But do you see a difference between the two? Someone who's in running a credit card company or a mortgage house, and someone who is acting as a judge, and supposedly trying to enforce the law according to the state and the U.S. Constitution. Do you see a difference?
The Supreme Court, the SCOTUS, is the only constitutional court left in this country. All other courts are administrative courts of record. They don't acknowledge the Constitution. They'll tell me that I am not a party to the Constitution inside of our circuit court.
Interesting concept, because there are people who'll say that it doesn't really matter if they're incorporated or not, because they're still working under the authority of the U.S. Constitution, and they're subservient to that Constitution, even as a corporation.
I don't think so. That's why it's fraud. They're criminals. It's the same thing. Like, I grew up in Southern California in a gang neighborhood, and there were some gangs that actually took rent from business owners for unlawful protection, right? Wink, wink. So that's the same thing, is they're operating under fraud, and they're using coercion to commit extortion. But because we don't know how to fight back, and we haven't for so long, they've gotten away with it. And all I'm doing is I'm saying, show me your authority under like, how, if it's not slavery and it's not martial law, how are they able to do this? So I've been asking them, are we under martial law? Yes.
And they've answered yes. Oh, I lost them. Damn it. Just when it was getting good there. Yeah, so that leads me to several other questions that I wanted to ask him, because, like I said, I don't know how which court cases he's been through. Have you ever heard of the court case Downs versus Bidwell?
I didn't hear that. I was choppy. Say it again.
Okay, have you heard of the Supreme Court case? This is from the Supreme Court Library, Downs versus Bidwell.
Mm-hmm. We use that. Yeah, we use that for our de jure government.
But it says right here, right, and there's two extension statutes coming out of Downs and Bidwell from their opinion. It said it may be added in this connection that to put the rest of all doubts regarding the applicability of the Constitution to the District of Columbia Congress by the Act of February 21, 1871, specifically extended the Constitution and laws of the United States to this district, meaning that the Constitution is still the superior law of the land, according to Downs and Bidwell. So that would extend over any corporation, right?
You would think. I mean, that's what we're fighting for. So to me, it's like a homeowners association. Our government has moved in the same like a homeowners association. So wherever you live here in Bandon, there's either a HOA or there's not. Well, imagine if someone came in and said, now you're under the jurisdiction of the HOA and you have to follow these rules. But you say, wait a minute, I was here prior to your creation, therefore I'm grandfathered into the original rules. I'm not subject to your policies. But we haven't done that. We've literally given consent to be governed under the HOA every time they ask us for driver's license and registration, name and date of birth. If you comply, now you're under the HOA.
So, and part of that is, you can go to the recent Supreme Court ruling on where they ruled against the Chevron deference, or ruled in the Chevron deference case, where they're saying administrative law judges has no authority over people because we deserve our day in court. But of course, from what I'm hearing from you, you're trying to say that our day in court really doesn't matter because our courts are all incorporated, right? Except for the Supreme Court. So therefore, what does it matter? Because if the system is that much corrupt, even if you go to court, you're not going to get a fair day in trial.
I don't go to court. I submit my documents. They don't respond, and I remain in honor. And I'm waiting. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I've been waiting for a warrant for failure to appear, and it hasn't happened.
Well, there may be other reasons for that. They may actually just not have room to hold you. And in many times you will find that they won't come after people just because they know how it's not something that you're not out there hurting people. You're not molesting children. You're not raping. You're not robbing. And so they just don't look at it as a situation that is necessary to take care of. Samantha Frost. Well, let me go to this first one. Let me see. She says, just the 14th and 16th Amendments were not ratified. Now, I've heard this about the 14th Amendment. Are you making this claim as well about the 14th and the 16th Amendment, which I'd have to look up the 16th Amendment to remember what that was?
I would say that I'm making the claim that when Washington, D.C. was established and incorporated, everything after that is fraud. So if anything prior, like the first assembly, like right now we're developing the assembly for Oregon. The first assembly was in 1619. That's a long time ago.
More before 1776 too.
Oh, yeah. So that assembly of people helped create those founding documents. And then 100 years from that, Washington, D.C. was erected, and I say erected intentionally because it's all fallacy. There's the Washington Monument is a big phallus symbol, and so is the Vatican is the female, the keyhole, and they're the key holders, so the Vatican is the religious arm, and D.C. is the military arm, whereas the City of London is the financial arm. But it's my understanding that these three pillars of false government have been dismantled. And now it's up to us as free men and women on the land to reestablish our de jure Republican form of government. And it's like the Wizard of Oz. When Toto, right? Because in Latin, Toto means all together. So all together we pull the curtain. And we expose the man behind the curtain with the levers and the pulleys. I've done that. Done. But yet we still have a whole group of people who are still worshiping the great Wizard of Oz, and they're not willing to be self-governing.
Define that Wizard of Oz. When you say, hold on, David, when you say they're worshiping the Wizard of Oz, are you saying the Washington, D.C., our founding fathers, the Constitution, the Vatican? Define what are they worshiping?
Well, the Wizard of Oz is like when the Scarecrow wanted to go ask the wizard for a brain, and the Tin Man wanted to ask the wizard for a heart, and Dorothy just wanted to go home, right? And the lion wanted courage. So isn't that something that we're able to develop ourselves, or maybe we go to our higher authority, whatever that is? But for most people, they want to go to the government, and you asked me if my son was going to benefit from government programs. And I say no, because that's like going to the great wizard and asking for a heart or a brain or courage. And for me, I say we can do that here at the juice bar. Like I'm self-governing in the juice bar when I'm taking care of my own health and wellness, and I'm educating myself, and I'm having conversations like this with people who are interested, And so to me, we can be self-governing if we stop acknowledging the illusion that is the Great Wizard.
So do you think then that going back to the U.S. Constitution, the founding fathers, that the Constitution, and this was something that someone else had asked because I thought it was interesting and related to what you were saying, he says, and this is Oregon Outlaw 2000, the Constitution was not ratified like all the unconstitutional gun laws and wars and monetary system, but the Constitution was ratified. The Constitution was ratified. It was a document that was written by a bunch of guys in behind closed doors. But once they wrote the document, they brought it out, and the 13 states, territories at the time, ratified it, the colonies.
I wasn't there, so to me that's hearsay. You know, like there is a thing called hearsay, and if you don't have direct knowledge, then it's hearsay. And I can only speak to what I have direct knowledge of, honestly.
But that's what you want to go back to, is adherence to the U.S. Constitution. But yet right there, you're saying you're not even sure if it's been ratified. Why would you want to go back to something that you're not even sure it's been ratified?
So this shirt says alcoholism is an addiction to consuming alkalized water. What I say is if you change the spelling, you change the perspective. But in most cases, if you hear the word alcoholism, you don't know how it's spelled. So you automatically think disease, destruction, right? Alcoholism is bad. But it's not until you see how it's spelled do you know that there's an alternate perspective available. So the problem is we're talking Constitution, but we're not specifying in which case which one we're talking about. There's an organic Constitution and there's like a GMO Constitution. Just like there's organic fruit and GMO fruit. I want to go back to organic. I want to go back to the way that it was prior to all of this trickery. And when it comes to trickery, it's fraud. So all I want to do is get before the fraud and then live there under natural law, which is common law that says do no harm. And this other thing that exists, their whole entire job is to do harm. So to me, I want to go back to before it was harmful.
So you like the idea of contracts and being able to enter into contracts and living up to those as long as they're valid and moral contracts. The Constitution, the way I read it, is a moral and valid Constitution. You can read it. I can read it. It's very easily understood. So we can argue over the ratification. I think you can go back and look at the documents that were created when it was ratified and who signed it, whether it was ratified or not. And it's not hearsay because they actually signed those documents saying that they ratified it at the time they did it. But my question to you then is, the document itself a legitimate document that's moral and what you want to use as the guiding post for our country?
So the Bill of Rights, number one, first and foremost, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And then there's a thing, it's that list that I gave you, the unalienable rights as our property that we're all born into. And the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is to protect our property. So that's what it comes down to, is like, I would defend your right to inhabit your property. If the government wants to come and steal your property because you haven't paid property taxes, I think that that's unlawful, right? It might be legal, but it's not lawful. And there is a difference. So everything that they're doing is legal, but it's not lawful. They can't exist at the same time. And so like what I would like to do is utilize these founding documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We can go further to the 1200s and talk about the Magna Carta. It's like one of the first documents that we use to establish individual sovereign rights of the people. And that's from the 1200s. And then there's a lot of other things that happened before the Constitution, before the Bill of Rights, that supports what we're doing. The main thing is that right now we're being governed under the 78
71.
Washington D. Yeah, 71 Washington D.C. Act or whatever under fraud. And then the other thing too is intention. Intent is really big in law, right? It's the difference between a first and a second degree murder, right? Or manslaughter is the intention to do harm. And I feel, I can't say this definitively and speak for everyone, but I feel like what Washington, D.C. did was bad intention. And so right there is another fraud. You can't deceive the people with an intention to deceive. It becomes fraud.
I'm going to have to also go back and look at my original, my copy of the Constitution, because Samantha Frost puts in something here. And hi, Samantha, thank you for tuning in today. This is an interesting conversation, and there are many different aspects of it that some of it I'm getting, some of it I don't agree with, some of it I think I don't have enough information to even argue the situation. But she says they changed the Constitution from the Constitution for the United States to the Constitution of the United States unconstitutionally. And you're saying that happened with the Congressional Act of 1871?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I can't prove this right now. It's just what I've learned. My own opinion is when there's for, it means without. So the Constitution for the of Constitution of the United States means without. So once they did that changeover, it was a Constitution without the United States. It's a new contract. So basically what I do is when I submit my documents, like say to the mortgage company, when I submitted that conditional acceptance, it was an offer for a new contract. That became a new contract. So I agree. I paid my mortgage until they did not respond to my new contract. When they ignored me is when I stopped paying, because their ignorance was dishonorable. And when I'm in honor and they're in dishonor, I don't feel like I'm obligated to perform under fraud. I don't want to participate in fraud. If I participate in fraud, it's the same as giving consent to the fraud. So when I submitted my conditional acceptance, that's like me submitting a new contract. And when they ignored me, that's acceptance of the new contract. So then everything that they did after that was unlawful under the new contract. And
this gets back to what Alex Bowser here says. He likes to play with words. He's good at it. Meaning you're playing with words. You're using semantics as a way to justify not paying off a contract that you agreed to. And in some ways, actually, I kind of agree with Alex. It seems like you're just playing with words here to use it as a way to nullify your responsibility to pay that contract. I don't know, man. I think if you agree to something, you would agree to it. And I don't think you can change that contract without both of the people in the contract having consent. So that I have a little bit of problem with, Dave.
Well, I'll show you. I've got a book on the other side of the juice bar. It's called Word Magic. And I haven't read the book cover to cover, but jurisdiction means the rule of words. So in order for them to obtain jurisdiction, they have to use word magic. And in order for us to play their game, it's a game. And it's not designed for us to win. So if we're going to play the game, we have to learn the word magic. Otherwise, we're going to lose every time.
Once again, this is what the left is doing. The left is changing the meaning of words to suit their ideological narrative. And now you've got people who are saying that a biological man can be a biological woman, but yet we know that's not true, because you can take a DNA test no matter how many operations you have, no matter how many things you get removed and things put onto your body and changing you from one sex to another. If you're born a man or you're born a woman, 100 years from now, after you're dead, they take a DNA test, they can prove you were a man or a woman. So do you see how you kind of playing with the words is exactly what the left is doing, playing with the words? No,
because they only have jurisdictions over persons. If you remember, especially because we don't have public transportation around here. So in France, in 2020, 2021, it says no persons are allowed on the train without a face covering. Well, that doesn't mean men or women, because there's also a court case that from like 1901 or I don't know when, but it's like Downs versus administrators or something like that. I can get it for you, but it says that no corporation has jurisdiction over natural man. And that doesn't mean male, it means mankind. So no corporation has jurisdiction over man, which is, I believe, the reason for this gender war is to remove men and women from the conversation, because they do not have jurisdiction over men and women. They only have jurisdiction over persons, residents, citizen, taxpayer, plaintiff, respondent. That's why they're always reclassifying us in their legal documents. And you'll never hear it about men or women. But in the original Constitution, it talks about mankind, men. All men are created equal, not just males with a penis. That's mankind. And so that's men and women under natural law, because no corporation has jurisdiction over natural man, but they do over persons.
And the original Constitution declared that black people were only 3/5 of a person.
That was the Louisiana Compromise.
That was the Louisiana Compromise, right? But and there was reason for it, valid reason, because they were trying to give representation to the blacks. It wasn't always about discrimination. However, that's really a wordplay in the original document of the Constitution, because nobody is 3/5 of a person. You're a person or you're not. You're a human.
I'm not a person.
Or you're not.
I'm not a person. A person.
You're a man named Dave.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I'm claiming jurisdiction in the way I present myself. And I'm also beneficiary, which means I'm only supposed to receive benefits if I do no harm.
So how is, so you got this group, this organization, the Oregon General Jural Assembly. And once you get the amount of counties, which is 14, because there were only 18 counties when we were originally made a state, do you really think they're going to accept what you give them? Because it's not really a legitimate vote according to the state of Oregon and their rules and regulations.
Well, if they're found guilty under the grand jury, which is one of the 5 forms of government, you've got the grand jury, the executive, legislative, judicial, and jural assembly. So our jural assembly has already presented our declarations to the grand jury, and they have agreed that our declarations are true. So now it's our job to assemble the 5th pillar of government under the Constitution. Once our jural assemblies have established, then we take our declarations under the grand jury's, approval. We can take it to the commander-in-chief of the military, and then under the Constitution, I think it's Article 4, the commander-in-chief is obligated, because he's a trustee for the benefit of the people in the republic. And the commander-in-chief, whoever that might be, is required under the Constitution to send in the military to arrest the criminals who are named in our declarations. And I had the opportunity to create my own declaration of truth. And I've named everybody that has personally done me harm. I haven't named anybody who hasn't personally harmed me. But also I've given the sheriff of Coos County an opportunity to cure. He can come to our side because he has not personally harmed me, but he has allowed harm to occur. So he has an opportunity to I don't know what the word would be, to provide remedy. Otherwise, he's guilty of treason. I don't have to tell you what that means for him, but it's going to be up to him to take a new oath for the people under the new de jure government, or he's going to get in line with the people that I've named who have personally harmed me. He's no different.
So here's the thing. You're calling this the Jural Assembly, but the Jural Assembly is you're deriving that from the First Amendment, right? It's not in
the right to assemble. And also, though, and I don't want to say this because this is just my opinion, but it's not something I don't know if the Chief Justice of the General Jural Assembly would say this on my behalf. But we also have the right to an organized militia, and that we're choosing to be a nonviolent organized militia. But also the term patriot in Webster's dictionary, or maybe Cornell or somewhere, it says someone who loves their country and will do what it takes to defend the country. And we've chosen to go a nonviolent route where the pen is mightier than the sword, and we are assembling according to the Constitution. And they already did this once. Under the Obama administration, all 50 states had their grand jury indict Obama for crimes against humanity, but it fell through. The military would not support the grand jury's decision because the counties were not assembled at that time. So they had to start over. And now that we've started over, I say we, it wasn't me. I'm only in for like 6 months, but they started over and they went back further than they originally did. And they started with the counties. And that's where we're at right now. Alaska has already finished what we're trying to do, but for whatever reason, and I don't know, I can't speak to them, is they haven't called in the military. Michigan is another state that's already done what we're doing. So,
well, and they could have valid reasons. They want to go through the court system, and the court they have created the court system. So let me go over a couple of comments that I have, because it does lead into some of the things that I was going to ask. Does your group receive any grant money?
No, we are all doing this out of our own pocket. We're using our own debt notes.
So Samantha Frost says President Trump has already destroyed the corporation. He signed our debt from the Fed Reserve to the Treasury, and remember the capitulation tour. Do you know what she's talking about, and could you explain it?
It has to do with the 209 countries who signed the Treaty of Nasara and Jassara. I'm not an authority on that. I don't speak about Nasara and Jassara, but I do know that we are going to an asset-backed currency, and we are, going back to a constitutional republic, but only if the men and women can be self-governing. Because right now, I don't think, the average man or woman who gets pulled over by the police, when they're told to provide license and registration, they comply. I'm not recommending that people do what I do. It's not easy, and it's not recommended. But most of us can't identify the 3 pillars of government, much less the 5, pillars of constitutional republic. So there's a lot that we have to unlearn and then learn and relearn in order for us to be self-governing. And we have to avoid civil war, because there's a great divide in this country. And I'm, doing what I can. And by having this conversation is very helpful, because it proves that I'm coming from a nonviolent approach. Right. And I want to remain in honor. And that's very important. So to start a civil war is very dishonorable. And I don't consent to that at all.
Tiffany Sizemore? She says the first assembly was in Georgetown in 1619, which you've already mentioned, and the de jure Republican form of government abandoned their seats, those are the seats that the assembly will fill. So you're actually going back to the 1619 de jure Republican that they did in Georgetown, the Republic, and you're going to fill the void that they have left when they abandoned those seats. How do you do that when in 1619, doesn't the Constitution of 1770, well, actually it'd be 1789, the Declaration of Independence was 1776, but 1789, after the Articles of Confederation was taken apart, they did the Constitution, I believe it was 1789, and doesn't that supersede what happened in 1619, the de jure Republican?
Right, but that's what we're using. Yeah, we're using that as our foundation to build on now. There's actually been another Declaration of Independence in 2010 that was, I don't know if established or agreed upon, to include modern tyranny, and in 2010 was after the last, depression under the Obama administration. And they felt at that time that they needed a new Declaration of Independence. And part of my documents that I send to the court is a declaration of self-determination. We all have the right of self-determination. So in my declaration of self-determination, I say that I am not the property of any man or woman or corporation, nor will I ever be by implied consent or tacit agreement. That's the first line in my declaration of self-determination. I claim to be a man governed only by natural law, not by commercial law or maritime.
Right.
What's that?
A man named Dave. You are a man named Dave. So when do you guys meet? And are you accepting members? What's going on in your group?
So there's an affidavit of fact that every member has to sign as their first agreement. And they have, for example, you can't be a bar card holder. You can't be an attorney. I think 15 years is the rule for any bar associated attorney has to not practice law.
Whoa, we lost him again. And that was a good point he was starting to make, because it led me to a couple of other questions. Okay, so he's not going to. Good, here he is. He's back again. Okay, Dave, how can you say that after we just talked about not discriminating, that if you're a public business, I guess you would be considered a private group, not a public business. So that's how you can get away with not accepting lawyers from the bar.
Can you hear me? They've already proven that they can't be trusted. They're engaged in criminal activity. So to me, we don't allow active criminals in our group.
Okay.
And also, you can't have given up your citizenship. You still have to be an American, capital C, citizen. And if you've done like the state national, then you've given up your citizenship and you're now without a country. And so when this whole thing changes over, state nationals will be without a country, and they'll be maybe considered foreign invaders. I'm not sure. I can't.
Who else besides people who are associated with the bar would be considered people without a country?
I have the affidavit of fact. Everybody who sits down with me, I go over everything with them, and they have the right to either it applies to them or it doesn't. And for me, I checked all the boxes. I was qualified to honorably sign my affidavit of fact because the criteria is where I fell into. But when I found this group, I was already down this path. I had already learned a lot of this stuff, and I knew that we needed something. I just didn't know what. And
right.
when I found this group, it was a small group of women, elderly women, older than 50. And they found me, and I'm in my 30s. I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly what this was because in my heart, I was waiting for something like this. I signed my affidavit of fact. A couple months later, we formed our Coos County de jure Petite Jural Assembly, and I swore an oath for the people of Coos County. It's a county covenant, and so I signed an oath to basically act in the benefit and the highest benefit of the people of Coos County. And then, the rest is history. So for me, I know.
We lost them again. Samantha Frost put an interesting thing up here, BAR, which stands for British Accreditation Registry. Is that true? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, that's interesting. I've always heard that anyone who's a member of the bar is actually working under the auspices of a foreign justice system. And so, Dave, Samantha Frost just put up the word BAR, which means British Accreditation Registry. I'll just take your word for it. Is that true?
Yep, that's right. They're all foreign agents of the crown. They're not for us. They're for the crown.
That's exactly what Tiffany Sizemore just says. They work for the crown. Well, you guys got your lines down. At least you got your lines down. But I think you've got an uphill battle. When do you have meetings? Do you invite people to your meetings? Is this open to the public? Tell us about that.
The meetings are open to the public. I like to have my meetings here at the Juice Bar because it's a friendly environment, and it's for health and wellness. I say that I'm sojourning for health and prosperity, and the Juice Bar is a great place for us to meet. We also meet at public libraries. We rent out the conference rooms, and we meet at the North Bend Library, the Coos Bay, and the Bandon Public Library. It is open to anybody, but except for we don't allow, I don't want to say allow, we don't encourage infighting. And I was a part of the Citizens Restoring Liberty, but once it got to where everybody was arguing, I bowed out. And if you remember, I even ran as a write-in for the mayor of the city of Bandon in 2022. Right. And I got about 200 write-in votes with minimal campaigning. So I was mostly campaigning from the Juice Bar as a word of mouth, candidate. And that's all this is word of mouth, grassroots. We're inviting people that we personally know who would be a good fit. And when they come in, they're either going to know that this is a good fit for them or they're not going to join. And the ones who have joined, they seem to be like as if it's in their soul, like something in their soul told them to join. And I qualify. That's me. The living spirit inside of the man called Dave said, this is where you have to be. And so this is where I am.
Let me ask you this. And he's gone again. Boy, I'll tell you, I'm just having a hell of a time keeping him on there. But if you guys want to find out more, go to the Oregon General Jural Assembly.com, and there's a hyphen between all the words, Oregon General Jural Assembly. And that, once again, is Oregon General Jural Assembly.com, and you can find out more. David's back with me. So, David, do you have someone who is the leader or the figurehead of your group in Oregon, and who is that person, and do you have one that's national?
National, no. But we do have a chief justice that was elected by the people. He's only allowed to serve, I want to say one term, but that might not be true because I know that his term is almost up. So it's possible that a new chief justice pretty soon, but it'll be amongst the pool of people that have already sworn in. So it's basically like how the grand jury is made up of the people of the assembly. And so the chief justice is going to come from the people who have assembled, and we will elect a new chief justice. I was elected as the moderator for Coos County, and I am under the authority of the Chief Justice, who is in charge, or the spokesman for the Oregon General Jural Assembly, and his name is R.D. Mitchell. He's a holistic health practitioner, so like preventative health and wellness, non-pharmaceutical. And he's gone against the Oregon Department of Health and the medical board for years, decades. He's older than my dad. And I feel like if I were him doing what I do here in the juice bar, I would be under attack too, because we don't subscribe to the system. And in fact, we're rescuing people from the medical system and allowing them to have the tools to take care of themselves. So when I learned about him and what he does for work, and how he's been attacked for the work that he does, I resonated with that. And I said, this guy is just like me, but different.
And I can completely understand that. I can totally get that. Where was that leading me? I had another good question I was going to ask you. This is all a group. You guys have meetings. They can find out more about you at the Oregon General Jural Assembly. Before I get you out of here, is there anything you want to tell the listeners since you are here and got their ear?
Well, like I said, I don't recommend that you do what I'm doing with the police, the traveling and the driving. It, like the end of that video, it said one's purpose. I know you're familiar with one's purpose and what they're doing with human trafficking, but it's not just sex trafficking. It's not child trafficking. We are being financially, emotionally, and spiritually trafficked. And it's not a system that is working for our benefit. It's a system that wants to benefit from us. And it's a debt slave system. So if you agree with that, then you'll most likely fit into what we're doing. You don't have to go above and beyond like what I'm doing. That's all personal stuff. The General Jural Assembly does not teach us how to be disobedient. What they want to do is they want to establish an actual de jure government for the people, just like the Constitution for the United States. Not of, but for.
And I'm going to have to go look that up. The word of and for. I'm thinking my Constitution actually says of, and I will have to do a little more research in my history, but you can't know everything about history, will you? That's why we have to learn, and this was a great conversation to be teaching us. David, one more question. I remembered what I was going to ask. Most of the people who get involved, do they have a specific ideological bent? Meaning, are these people who join, are they Republican, Democrat? Are they conservative, liberal, Marxist? Where do they fit, most of them?
Most of them are, I would say, I don't think, just like I don't identify as a person or a citizen, I don't think it's wise to do that. But I would say, if anything, if I had to speak for other people, which I don't want to do, I would say most likely libertarian, but I can't speak for other people. There's a lot of conservative Christians because the founding documents do have biblical principle. So there tend to be more conservative Christians, but we can't trust the Republican Party. We can't trust the Democratic Party.
No.
Really, like, I don't consent. They're the left wing and the right wing are two wings of the same bird. Put it that way.
Right. They're a paradigm of the same group. Right. So you don't have to answer this, but it was a question brought up by Alex Bowser. Where is this juice bar? Are you at liberty to say where the juice bar is?
Yeah, right here in Bandon, Oregon, in the Ray Shopping Center. My aunt is the owner of the juice bar. We opened it together. I used to be over 320 pounds. I needed to be healthy, so I made it my job. Yeah, I made it my job to become more healthy of a person. And I've cleaned up my thoughts, because I used to have self-destructive thoughts and behaviors. And right here in Bandon. So she basically just allowed me to take care of myself and help other people do the same. And she's the owner of the juice bar, but I still have my wellness program. I still take care of myself, and I help others take care of themselves too.
Sweet. All right, David, I want to thank you for coming on. This was a very interesting conversation, and I'm glad we finally were able to have this. And I want you to know if I should have had you on sooner, and I'm glad to have gotten you on now. And we'll get you back again because from what I understand, this is going to progress. And I want to hear what you've done as far as the progression in your group. So you'll come back on again, right?
I didn't hear your question. You're too choppy. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I couldn't make it out.
So what I was asking is that your group, what you're doing is going to be a progression of things. So you want to come back at some point in time to tell us how you're progressing? How about now? Can you hear me? Oh, I lost him again. Dang. I think he's at the juice bar, and he needs to give a ginger shot to that internet hookup because they need to get that thing going. Maybe next time we get him on here, we'll get him on the smartphone. But here he is again. This is cool. So we got him back. So Dave, can you hear me now?
Barely.
Dave?
Go ahead, give it a try.
Okay, so what I was asking is that because your group you're active, you're going to be progressing as far as what you're doing. So you're willing to come back on the show to tell us how that progression is going, correct?
I wish I knew what you were saying, Rob. I really apologize. This internet is not working today.
That's all right, man. That's all right.
Try one more time. One more time. You're good now.
Okay, so what I was saying is that since your group is actually active, it's going to be progressive what's going to happen. So you're willing to come back on at any time in the future to tell us about the progression of your group, right?
Yes, and I'll have a direct line from my computer to the Wi-Fi next time. A direct line.
Got a deal.
So
you got a deal.
No more
all
Wi-Fi.
right, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and you take care, David. I appreciate your time. All right.
Thank you very much. Man. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was an interesting interview. And to be quite honest with you, I like some aspects of it. There are some aspects that are questionable. I could sit here for probably another 4 hours asking him questions, especially about some of the natural rights they have. Some of this stuff is I don't know. Rights to me are negative, and meaning that if someone has to provide you something for you to have a right, it's not a right. And so I'm a little questionable on some of the rights that they have designated here, the right to. But the list was so long, I didn't want to get into it because we were having such a very good conversation about what the group actually does and where they're going. And this is something, if you're interested, go for it. And if not, don't worry about it. Be quite honest with you. I think this is kind of like the Greater Idaho movement. I love the idea of the Greater Idaho movement. I think it's a great idea. I would prefer just to get rid of Multnomah County. If Oregon could just eject Multnomah County, maybe that would be a good movement too. But the Greater Idaho movement, if you don't know, they're trying to move the Idaho border around counties who have joined up in the Greater Idaho movement and who have put it on the ballot and asked their citizens, that's a capital C, citizens, if they would like to have their county in Idaho instead of in Oregon. And many of the counties have agreed they'd much rather be in Idaho than in Oregon. And so that's a wonderful thing. However, for this to happen, the Idaho legislature has to agree to it. The Oregon legislature has to agree to it. And then the U.S. legislature has to agree to it. And for that to happen means that you would have to see a grizzly bear and a polar bear both getting struck by lightning at the same time while fighting in some place. I mean, it's just astronomical figures. I mean, it's like a snowball's chance in hell that the Greater Idaho movement is going to be successful. However, I like the fact that people are putting in an effort to try to change people's mind and expand it to thinking about, what are we going to do to get this government back? I mean, I like what's in the Constitution. There were problems with the original document, and it's been amended several times since its original inception. So I think that there are some things that we need to keep about the Constitution. I think that it's a great idea. I need to get more clear on the word of instead of for. Is it the Constitution for the United States, the Constitution of the United States? That right there was more of a clincher to me, because yeah, it's semantics, but it's kind of an important semantics, because for is definitely different than the word of. And, you know, I think that's something that we definitely need to check out. Go to the Oregon General Jural Assembly.com. There's a dash between each of the words, and it's, you know, you can find out a little bit more. Let me see if I have the flag up here. They had an interesting flag. I didn't even get to ask Dave about this flag. Look at this flag. This was the peace flag, the civilian flag. This is one, I wish, David, I should have kept him on for this, because that's a butt ugly flag, okay? But it's an actual flag, an American flag that was flown here in America and during certain times in our country. Personally, I'm more partial to the old red, white, and blue. There's also other types of, this is an antique flag. I saw this flag was on sale, and it's once again the peace flag or the civilian flag, whatever you want to call it. And it was on sale at some place that deals with antique flags. So this is real. This is real stuff they're talking about. How valid it is, I don't know if everything they're saying is true based on the law that's been passed, but I thought David was pretty good on remembering the court cases and remembering the laws. I don't agree with him on all the interpretations that he came up with, but then again, I'm not supposed to. We're having a conversation, and that's what's really important. The meaning of this flag, the stripes are a horizontal or vertical red and white altering pattern to the side of and below the canton. Usage, the 16 stripes of this American civil flag run vertically and represent the 16 states in the Union at the time when the flag's design became official in 1799. So this was a flag that became official as the United States flag in 1799. And if you want to look here, this is the flag of peace, and just the flag that I've shown you. This is an old historic picture. This is the U.S. civil flags of 1919 at the end of World War I, and because they call it the peace flag, or the civil flag. And so this is part of history that I would like to learn more about before I jump into any group and decide to create a grand jury or the Jural Assembly. But I don't want to stop or discourage anyone else from getting involved. If this is what you want to get involved with, that's a great thing. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, I'm chasing windmills. What can I say? I'm the Don Quixote of Coos County. I'm out there trying to fight these windmills. And people might think that I'm wasting my time. Maybe I am. I don't know. I think it's a winning argument, and I think it's going to be very good if we can keep those damn windmills out of here, because, it's a problem. It's a problem. Let's see here. I always like showing this picture. Yes, there's President Trump doing what he does best. What a dude. What a cool dude. Let's see. Oh no, how did I get to that picture? Let's see, I need to go down further and talk about my sponsors. If you are anyone who's been a regular watcher of my show, my podcast, I am sponsored by several businesses, 3H Tree Service being one of those businesses. They can come in and remove those trees with surgical precision. These guys are badass. You don't believe me? Go to 3H Tree Service on Facebook. It's just that name, 3H Tree Service, and check out some of the videos. Matt does some incredible videos where he's up in the air, 60, 70, 80 feet in the air, and he's videotaping, the surrounding area. And it's funny, guess where I'm at today, and that's where we kind of came up with Where's 3H Tree Service. I'm sorry we didn't play today. We just didn't, he's way out in the middle of nowhere, and so therefore he wasn't able to play Where's 3H Tree Service. I don't want to waste you folks' time and make you drive around the county looking for that $50 when he's way way out in the middle of nowhere cutting down trees. But that's what he does because he's really good at it. And you can find out more about 3H Tree Service at 541-294-1800. Call Matt and the boys because they kick ass. For some reason, Tim didn't come on the show. I sent him a quick text just before the show, and he gets busy over there. He's got a little big job to do over at Tom and Gigs. Tom and Gigs, so you can take care of all of your automotive needs. If you need to call them up, it's 541-888-4660. Once again, it's 541-888-4660. They're over at 135 South Shoneman Street in Coos Bay, right behind the car wash. Anyone who lives in Empire neighborhood or lives in Coos County, you know where the car wash is in Empire. He's right behind the car wash at 135 South Shoneman, and he can take care of all your automotive needs. You need a light bar, you need side rails, you need a tonneau cover. He's the man to go see. You need to get that alignment done. It's very important. He can do inspections on your vehicle and tell you what's wrong and help you out. He's an honest man. I highly recommend him. He's been working on my cars for at least a decade or so now. So I highly recommend Tim over at Tom and Gigs. And of course, Herbal Choices, my third sponsor. Herbal Choices is the choice of most herbal consumers here in Coos County. Why? Because they have experts at their buildings, at their place of business that can help you out with all your choices and all those herbal needs. And you can find Herbal Choices at 5 different locations in the area. You can find one south of Bandon. There's one on 101 in Coos Bay. There's another one on 101 in North Bend. There's one in Charleston, and there's one in Reedsport. And I highly recommend Herbal Choices over the competition because they rock and they're my sponsors. So that makes them ultra cool. So what can I tell you? Go to Herbal Choices for all those herbal needs. And Oregon Firearms Federation. They're the only no-compromise gun group in Oregon. Kevin Sterritt kicks ass. We're going to get Kevin on the air here soon. Like I said, I need some political therapy, and Kevin is a great political therapist. He's one of, as far as I'm concerned, of all the people I talk to, and believe me, I talk to a lot of significant people in government all the time, and he's not really in government, but because he is an activist, I guess you could consider him partly a lobbyist. He's, as far as I'm concerned, the most intelligent person on what's happening in the inner workings of Oregon's government. I mean, this guy is great. And he's been fighting for our Second Amendment rights for a long time. That's Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group in Oregon. You can reach him at OregonFirearms.org because why? He kicks ass. So I highly recommend going and checking him out. They're not my sponsors, but I like to mention them, the Band and Gun Club. You can find out more about the Band and Gun Club at bandandgunclub.org. That's bandandgunclub.org if you need to hone in your pistol skills or you want to try shooting a couple of traps at the 5-stand trap shot. And it's a blast. I've gone out there many a time and have had a good time each time. And of course, Tioga Sports Park, ran by Tioga Sports Park Association. You can find out more about them at tiogasportspark.org. And the reason I tell you folks about this, I don't have to tell you. I don't even have to put either of those organizations on the screen, but because I want you to be proficient at using the tool of defense of your choice, whether that be an AR, whether that be a shotgun, whether that be a pistol. I want you to be a person who has precision at using that weapon. I want you to be able to use that weapon the best you can because I think it's great when people open carry and they're carrying their guns. I feel safer because I just assume if you're open carrying or you're carrying your gun, even if it's concealed, you're proficient with that firearm. And that's why I recommend Tioga Sports Park for your rifle and a pistol, and I recommend Band and Gun Club for your pistol and your shotgun. If you use any of those for your tool of defense, then I highly recommend you hone those skills because that's your responsibility. That's what you are supposed to do. And let's see, Alex Bowser, that was a good show, Rob. Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm good friends with Dave, and like I said, I don't agree with everything he was saying, but I think that he's someone who actually has a genuine heart. I just think that he's just kind of missing some things as far as what his responsibilities are. And I'll have to talk to him more about that, because he is a young man, and he is, as any of you guys who are my age, you're in your 50s, your 60s, we screwed up a lot when we were young men, okay? And just the fact that Dave is trying to do the right thing, trying to walk the right path, I would like to be someone who can help, mentor that young man and get him going in the right direction. I hope he continues being active. I'd like to see him move forward and educate himself, as we all should, on the inner workings of the government. And I've learned some interesting things today. Gary Landry, what did you say? I agree with you, Rob. He lost me with the mortgage analogy. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, Gary. The whole mortgage analogy, that kind of, once again, it's like, oh, well, I don't have to pay my credit card bills because why? Oh, well, the wording isn't suitable to me. I don't know. I didn't agree with either. And I also didn't agree with the fact that businesses have to accept people just because they do service in the public. I think that's what we lost in I think it was the 1963 Civil Rights Act. I think that the government should not discriminate against anyone. That is immoral. It's disgusting. However, individuals and individual companies, if you want to discriminate, that's your right. I think you're a freaking moron if you discriminate against people, especially their sexuality, because of the color of their skin. But I think you have a right to do that. And it's just like the lady who owned the cake shop who didn't want to bake a cake for the gay couple. She has a right to refuse because what they do is repugnant to her beliefs. And so I'm one of those who, I know people are going to say, Rob, well, what you're doing is you're giving an excuse for people to be racist. Well, I got news for you. People are racist. No matter how many laws that you pass, people are going to be racist. People are jackasses. There's nothing you can do about it. You try to pass the no jackass law and see how well that works out for you. It's not going to work at all because people are jackasses. And that's what freedom is all about. You have the freedom to be as smart and as stupid as you want, but you also have the responsibility to be responsible for your actions. You have to be responsible for your actions. And that's what we've lost in this country. People are no longer responsible for what they do. That's why we got people living in the streets, crapping in the streets, destroying property, harming other people, and no one's doing anything about it. Because for some reason we say, oh, well, they're poor, and because they're poor and they're on drugs, they have special rights. They can do whatever they want. They can crap in the street. They can lay there and shove drugs into their arms. No, that's, as a libertarian, that's not what being free is all about. Being free is doing what you want as long as you take responsibility for your actions. And as long as you're taking responsibility for your actions, do whatever the hell you want as long as you're consenting adults. And so, I don't know. That's just something there. So we'll get Dave back on the show. I've got new guests that I've been trying to line up. It's, I don't like to tell you about a potential guest, because, there may be a reason they don't come on. And I'm trying to get a few of the candidates on, but the Republicans are a little gun shy. I guess I beat up a few of the Republicans a little too hard in the arena of public opinion. But, if you're running for office and you're a Republican, you might want to come on the show, because I imagine most of the people who watch my show, who watch the podcast, they're probably going to be more susceptible to voting for people who are Republicans, who are conservative. So if you are a true conservative and you're in the Republican Party, you don't have to be scared of me. You don't have to be scared of me. I'm not going to beat you up, but I am going to hold you accountable. Once again, that you have to be responsible for your actions. So yes, I criticize people in the Republican Party. I criticize people in the Democrat Party. Hell, I criticize all of them when I think they're doing wrong, and I'm going to continue to do that. Why? Because I owe it to myself. I owe it to the people who I love and care for, and I owe it to you. You're the audience, and I think really, if I can do anything, it's to be as honest as I can about what we're doing here. And I'm just trying to inform you on these different things. Once again, I appreciate David for coming on, and I hope to see you this Friday. This Friday is going to be another Friday night rant. It was funny. This last Friday, I had no idea what I was going to do for a show. So if you watch last week's or this last Friday night rant, yeah, I was a little off the wall, a little unhinged, but that's because I really didn't have much of a show planned. I was able to plan a little bit better for this show because I was at the fair, the Curry County Fair, all week, and time got away from me. So the Friday night rant was a little odd, but I highly recommend you go and check it out. It's on Rumble or YouTube. And if you get a chance, please go over there and like and share all of that good stuff. You can find out more about me and what I'm doing at robtaylorreport.com. That's robtaylorreport.com. And of course, you can find me Rumble at Rob Taylor Report, X at Rob Taylor Report, YouTube at Rob Taylor Report. Yeah, I got them all. And go like, share, and subscribe to my pages and websites, because that helps me out. If you like what you're seeing, you like what you're hearing, give me a little boost. I can always help it. And that it's that virtual world, and those are those virtual rewards that we're looking for. So like, share, and subscribe when you go visit me at YouTube, Rumble, or X. And it's really cool that I'm on X. I used to do this on Facebook, but for some reason, Mark Zuckerberg, he got a really wild hair up his ass and has decided to put all these restrictions on my page because I said something old Mark didn't like. Well, Mark, you can go screw yourself. What can I tell you? You're not going to get me canceled. You're not going to get me kicked off. I will find a platform that I can speak from, and I imagine there are people out there who enjoy it just enough that they'll come and find me. So go to robtaylorreport.com. That's my website. And in fact, I'm so worried about getting canceled off my website that I'm looking to change that website to one of the parallel economy platforms. And I'll go into that later when I actually go through the changing of my website, because there is a platform where you can create and design websites where they don't care if you're a conservative, a libertarian, or actually give a damn about this country. They just don't care. In fact, they think it's a good idea, and they protect people like that. And so they're fighting against the cancel culture. And in fact, that's what I've been doing lately on a lot of the stuff that I've been working on, is trying to build up a parallel economy that is running next to the regular economy, where we have to go through ESG, where you have to get social points for the things that you do and the things that you say, and it's just wrong. People should judge you by the content of your character, not by the color of your skin, or if you're a Republican or a Democrat, or whether you're straight or gay. It doesn't matter. It's your actions. It's what you do. Whatever your actions are, that's what you judge people by. And if people are saying good things, but they're doing bad things, well, they're bad people. And just vice versa. There are a lot of people who say a lot of crappy things, but they go out there and they do wonderful things. So you have to judge people by their actions. And that's when you look at people, especially politicians that are in office, don't judge them by what they're saying, because they're going to promise you the world. What you do is you judge them on their voting record and how they behaved in office. That's where you judge them, because they'll tell you everything that you want to hear just to get reelected. And that's what I'm trying to avoid here. So please like, share, and subscribe to my page. If you're watching me on YouTube, you're watching me on Rumble or X, I would appreciate that. So it's going to be another great Friday night rant happening this Friday. And Monday's show, hopefully, like I said, I've been trying to get a specific Republican candidate to come on the show. We'll see if he comes on. I beat him up a little hard. What can I say? I abused them a little bit, just a little bit, not too much, just enough to get the truth out of them. And that's what you have to do. But until then, folks, thank you all for joining in. And until I see you next time, carry on, Coos County. Carry on, America. Carry on.